Most Roman bone pins were carved by hand using a knife or whatever similar sort of tool. This may have been done by professionals who could then sell the finished pins, or it might have been a household task during those long winter evenings. When used as hairpins, bone pins can slip out quite easily, hence the large numbers of complete pins found in the archaeological record, and replacements would have been quite a common requirement. The type of pin I'm going to be talking about has been turned on a lathe, thereby requiring a much more specialist equipment, unlikely to have been found in most households. The pins can be identified by having these very neat depressions on the head, where the metal centre of the lathe was positioned. Some of the shanks also have, some of the pins also have grooves on the shanks, which are much more even than those which have been carved by hand. Some of them you can see they've got the almost slight ledges to them as well. The pins can be divided into three main types. The most common one is the one-piece all bone type. The second type has a tenon on the top and a separate jet head attached. And the third type also has a tenon, but this has a glass or a crystal head. These are the rarest type by far. The pin shafts which have got tenons cannot always be immediately recognised as being lathe-turned unless they've been decorated with the grooves. And it's this feature that links all the three categories of the pins. Although the groove decorated pins are always in the minority, as can be seen on this table. The one-piece all bone ones, plain ones, 38, the most common type. And the grooves, as you can see. These are the pins that I've looked at so far. So you can see that the one piece is the most common by far, with 47 examples. But all of them do have examples with the grooving on the shafts. The one-piece all bones have quite a range of different head designs. Some of them are similar to the types you find on hand-carved ones, but others are much rarer examples, such as the thistle-headed type, which is sort of type 1.9 and associated types 1.10. So they're showing a wider range. They're not just copying the normal hand-carved examples. The most common type is the head between two reels. The bead between two reels. Although sometimes these actually look quite like it's a thistle head with a collar, rather than the two beads can often be quite sort of dissimilar. And here's just a range of them from various different places. You can see some with grooves on the shanks. This type is type 11 on the top line here. These are just various different sites, beginning with South Shields, Piercebridge, Malton, Catterick, and so on. As you can see, there are 20 examples of this type. While the next most common type, which is type 7, which is a flattened spherical head, only has 5 examples, and most of the other designs only have between 1 and 3 examples over all the different sites. Some of these types just actually only appear at one site. Segmented heads with 2 or 3 beads, which are types 1 and 2, just appear at South Shields. Piercebridge, you have types 10 and 14, again, just appearing at that particular site. So this does seem to suggest that there is local manufacture happening at quite a number of different sites, rather than just one place producing all of them. The composite types, these have the tenons to hold the heads on. They are short for the jet beads, which is the middle one, number 2, and much longer for the crystal heads at number 3. Of course, if you haven't actually got the head surviving, like on these examples, it's difficult to prove that these did actually have either the jet or crystal heads to them. Although if they have grooved shanks, it does seem likely that these are going to be of this particular type, and not other types of bone pins like those with separate bone heads, which seems to be much more a southern fashion. You can't actually see it particularly well on this photo, but number 3 does actually have grooves on its shank. There are less examples of this type of composite bone pins than the all bone ones. As well as being less, they have a sort of smaller range of different of head types, and they're not the same as not all the same as on the all bone examples. So these are the range found so far of the different types. And then the smallish category are the really nice, pretty ones. These have the much longer tenons and the spherical glass or crystal heads. I must admit, I haven't actually looked at these in the flesh yet, so to speak. These have, in publications, been variously described as made out of pearls, glass, or crystal, so I'm not exactly sure yet. There are only 4 examples of these known, 3 from York, and 1, which you've already seen, missing its head, comes from Wallsend. But because it has that long tenon, I'm sure it has to be this particular type. Dating, as usual, so many of these, including most of the examples from South Shields, come from old excavations, and you have minimum context dating. So looking at the much smaller number that actually do come from dated context from excavations, there's only one that comes from a context that is said to date before the late 3rd century. This is only a small fragment of one, and I do wonder if it's slipped into an earlier context. And you see the rest are or could easily be 4th century in date. And in fact, all of them could belong to the second half of the 4th century within the date ranges of the context they come from. Majority are actually found in things which are likely to be late 4th century. As pins are being used as hairpins are quite easily to lose, it's likely that they did start to enter the archaeological record comparatively soon after they actually started to be produced. And it does seem that this is a type that was principally made from sort of the mid-4th century onwards, the majority in the late 4th century. Professional bone workers have, of course, been using lathes to make things for centuries. It's usually things like counters. So it is possible that at some point they just decided to expand and to start making bone pins in the same way. But the use of the jet heads on some of the examples does suggest another possibility, that these are pins that have been made by jet workers. Vindelander has an all-jet pin which has been lathe-turned, and note the characteristic bead between 2 reels sort of head there, as we're finding on the bone examples. South Shields has again a jet pin which has got again lathe-turned, and this also has the groove decoration on. Also from South Shields, there's a couple of the beads, which again have got groove decoration on, showing that the jet workers were quite used to decorating things with sets of grooves, and the length of that bead, these are to scale, shows that they're used to being on quite long objects as well. The three sites that have produced the most examples of the lathe-turned boned pins, Piercebridge, South Shields and York. They all have some evidence for jet working on their sites. The best evidence comes from York and then South Shields. The pins, by the way, sorry, the heads, by the way, do appear to have been deliberately made as pin heads, and they're not just beads that have been sort of pressed into service. Assuming that their principal use was actually as hairpins, most of the shank is actually hidden from view when it's in use. So composite ones with bone shanks and jet heads could be seen as being just a cheaper version of all jet pins. But these don't appear to actually be sort of imitations. For a start, they do have a different range of different types of head designs. Jet pins, for example, have heads which are mainly faceted, spherical, or Cantharis-headed. And they don't cover the same wide range that was found on the composite pins. Here you can see sort of 68% of jet pins have a faceted head, whilst on the composite ones it only makes up 10%. Composite 45% have disc head, and they're quite uncommon in jet. They'll be under the all others in this particular table. You get these three main categories of jet heads, and then sort of lots of little one-offs, very unusual ones which have just been lumped together here. The composite ones and the all jet ones do actually cover the same range of sizes. They go from about 40 millimeters up to 160 millimeters. But the jet pins are much more biased towards the smaller sizes. So the average size of a composite pin is 89 millimeters, while jet pins are 69 millimeters. Many of the jet pins seem to have been repointed. The top line shows ones which the people publishing them thought they're actually made to be that size. The lower rows show some which have been repointed, and then just got some of the composite and all bone ones, just a comparison for sizes. The repointed pins may have been because they were easier to snap in use than the bone ones, and perhaps being more expensive to actually buy in the first place, they were repaired much more often than you would a bone one. But all the same, for whatever reason, people did have use for small jet pins, not necessarily use for hair, but you never know. So it may be that the composite ones with the jet heads were being bought for their length and had a slightly different purpose to the ones for the jet pins. We shall now digress onto hairstyles. Most of the elaborate Roman hairstyles seem likely to have been actually sewn into place rather than held in place using hairpins. Hairpins are much more likely to be used on the simpler twisted or plaited buns. Such a bun can be held in place by a single long pin, but most long pins seem to have been a bit more decorative, as on these examples from the 1st century, where, just going through, sticking out the other end. The Copperale one, there's only one pin sticking up, so you thought it was functional. You'd have had more than sticking up than just the one. Medium length pins, of course, would be the most common type by far. The pins work by being weaved in and out of sections of hair lying in different directions. Functional pins need to be a lot long enough to actually be able to do this. Having more than just one pin makes the gun much more stable, because you've got pins coming in from different directions, holding up different bits of hair. It means you don't have to faff around with your hair quite so much during the day, repinning it and holding it all up again. But also using more pins than is actually strictly necessary means it is easy for one of those to fall out without being noticed, as the other pins still hold the hair in place. As a reenactor who had long hair pinned up like that, this is how I've lost bone pins and not noticed, because the rest are holding them in. Short pins cannot move in and out of the different sections of hair particularly well, and most would easily drop out. The hair would sort of drop off the end as well. They're therefore not very efficient for actually holding hair in place. If they're also not locked into place with the hair, then again, they're much more easy for them to actually drop out. But short examples can, of course, be used as additional purely decorative pins. These pins are actually at the front of, this is a woman who's got a big plait of hair going up, sitting on the top of her head. You can just sort of see the slightly rectangular shape. They're just at the front. As you can see from the shanks, these are almost going in vertically. So these really can't be very long. But they are nicely decorative, that bright colour against the dark colour of her hair. Here is a couple of hairstyles that possibly show hairpins in use. This is an early 4th century design, where you have a massive plait or rope of hair. Presumably for most women this will actually be false hair, that's just wound round the head. And it just basically sits on the head like a hat or a hat band. So are these actually sort of pins? Well, if they are pins, can't actually prove that, they're just round dots. Are they actually functional, or are they just decorative? They've definitely been spaced as nice decorative panel positionings. But one of them was at the bottom of the curls of hair, and on the coin, the dots are in the middle of the coils going round. So on the top picture, this is again another woman with this big curl of, big plait of head on the top of her head. The line drawing at the bottom is from a statue, just showing you how it works. Massive plait going up the top of the head, onto the top of the head, the ends then folded over, but you have this sort of strange rectangular bit on the head. But as you see, she's got 2 sort of white dots on the front. These could possibly be functional, sort of holding the plait onto the top of her head, or they could just be purely decorative. The other one is a mid-4th century style, where she's got the white dots going down the hair by the side of the head. If these are pins, then they're going to be just sort of going horizontally. And again, you think that's quite precarious and have easily dropped out. But you can't actually prove these are pins. These could have just been beads that have been sewn into place. But it's just showing the potential. So looking at our sort of lathe-turned pins, the longer all bone and the jet-headed composite ones could have been used for fastening the hair in place. The shorter jet pins and some of the crystal-headed ones could have perhaps been used as just decorative pins. Distribution. So this map shows the distribution of the known examples so far, coming from 14 different sites. As can be seen, they're mainly north of the Humber and in the eastern part of the country. Some sites have examples of both composite and bone, and some strangely just sort of have one or the other. The largest numbers actually come from Piercebridge, who've got 23, and then South Shields, 20, followed by York with 13. The other sites each have less than 10. If they are being made by jet workers, it could be argued that the distribution should be wider, as jet jewellery was traded all around the country. However, jet does sometimes seem to have unusual distributions, such as the jet pins are also not found on all sites with jet jewellery. Seemingly, it seems to be principally a feature of large urban settlements and much rarer on military sites. The distribution in the northeast could be because of a specific regional hairstyle, as has been suggested by Hilary Cool, or it could relate to the trade networks of the different workshops actually making them. So in conclusion, this is a type of lathe-turned pin, possibly made by jet workers, that was fashionable in the northeast in the late 4th century. If anyone else knows of any examples, I would be very pleased to hear about them. Thank you.